class. I am Sir Michael and I will be your proctor for your subject Ethics and Philosophy. Before we start, let's have a prayer, and who can lead the prayer? Okay, Mr. Sugino, you may lead the prayer. Ms. Secretary, do we have any absent for today? Thank you very much. You may now take your seat. Mr. Nagisa, before we start our discussion for today's lesson, can you tell me what have you learned on our last discussion? Very good. You may now take your seat. How about the others? Miss Hinano, what have you learned in our discussion last week? Very good. Now that I heard that, alam ko na nakikinig talaga kaya. Class, do you know what are these people? Or ano yung ginagawa nila? Correct. They are philosophers. But more importantly, they are the key people on the topic that we are going to talk about today. The first speaker, his name is Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant was a German philosopher and one of the central Enlightenment thinkers. He is also the proponent of Deontology. The next speaker is Aristotle and Plato. Aristotle was a Greek philosopher and polymath during the classical period in ancient Greece, and Plato was an Athenian philosopher during the classical period in ancient Greece. Plato is the founder of the Platonist school of thought and the academy. In their writings, the term teleology originated. In the last picture, he is Jeremy Bentham, one of the proponents of consequentialism, together with John Stuart Mill and Henry Sidgwick. Bentham was an English philosopher, jurist, and a social reformer regarded as the founder of modern utilitarianism. Now let's start on our main topic, which is deontology, consequentialism, and teleology. Is anyone in this class have an idea on what are these three? Very good, Miss Rio. You may now take your seat. The first picture that I showed you before is Immanuel Kant, and like I said, he is the proponent of deontology. But what exactly deontology, and what values this theory exhibit? Deontology is an ethical theory that uses rules to distinguish right from wrong. Deontology is often associated with Kant. Immanuel Kant believed that ethical actions follow universal moral laws, such as don't lie, don't steal, and don't cheat. Deontology is simple to apply. It just requires that people follow rules and do their duty. This approach tends to fit well in our natural intuition about what is ethical and what isn't. Despite its strength, rigidly following deontology can result that many people find unacceptable. For example, suppose you're a software engineer and learn that a nuclear missile is about to launch and it might start a war. You can hack the network and stop the launch of the missile, but it also against your on your professional code of ethics to break any software system without permission. Because it's a form of lying and it's against the rules. Deontology advised not to violate this rule. However, in letting the missile to launch, thousands of people will die. So following the rules makes deontology easy to apply, but it also means disregarding the possible consequences of our actions when determining what is right and what is wrong. Sure, in simple terms, deontology suggests that actions are good or bad based on rules, or ma-define mo na tama yung action mo kapag sumusunod dito sa rules, or kapag sinabi na bawal magnakaw, then tapos hindi ka nagnakaw, good yung action mo. And one thing that you must remember kapag sa deontology is actions that obey rules, or mga actions na sumusunod sa rules ay ethical or tama. And while yung mga hindi, is syempre, malilabel sila as bad actions. And for better understanding, I will give an example. Suppose that I am hungry and there is a bakery that sell bread in front of me. And what I do is I steal a bread in order to aid my hunger. Now class, do you think what I've done is morally good? Yes, Mr. Akabane. And why? Very good. In Deontology, what I've done is wrong, even though my motive is good, which is to aid my hunger. But, yung action na ginawa ko to achieve that goal is hindi tama, which is stealing. Now, do you understand what is deontology? Now that we are clear on deontology, let's move on to consequentialism. Consequentialism is an ethical theory that suggested whether or not something is right by what its consequences are. For instance, most people would agree that lying is wrong, but if telling a lie will help save a person's life, consequentialism says it's the right thing to do. Two examples of consequentialism are utilitarianism and hedonism. Utilitarianism judges consequences by a greatest good for greatest number, while hedonism, on the other hand, says that something is good if the actions produces pleasure and avoids pain. Hedonism is sometimes criticized because it can be difficult or even impossible to know what the results of an action will be ahead of time. Indeed, no one can know the future with certainty. Also, in certain situations, consequentialism can lead to decisions that are objectionable, even though the consequences are good. For example, let's suppose an economist could prove that the world's economy will be stronger and most people will be happier, healthier, and wealthier if we just enslave or alipinin yung 2% of the population. Although the majority of people will benefit from this idea, most will never agree to it. However, when judging the idea solely on its result, as a classical consequentialism does, then the end justify the means. Deontology and Kantianism of Immanuel Kant counters consequentialism. Why? Because Kantianism suggests that do not use someone or something as a means to an end. It simply means that do not use someone as a stepping stone to achieve your goal. Because treating or using someone merely as means that the person is using another person simply to get what they want out of the situation. Basically, they're not doing the action for someone else, but using them for their own purposes or for their own good. Is everyone still following? Sure. Let's use our example on deontology, but this time using the concept of consequentialism. I'm hungry and there's a bakery nearby, and what I did is steal a bread in order to aid my hunger. If we are going to apply the concept of consequentialism, what I did is morally good or morally acceptable. Now my question, why my action is morally correct even though I steal a bread? Miss Hayami, why? Exactly, very good. Now, are we clear with consequentialism? Now let's move on our last topic. After this, I will give you an activity. So for our last topic, teleology. A teleology is an account of given things' purpose. For example, a teleological example of why forks have prongs or yung tatlong sa metinidor is that this design helps humans eat certain foods. Stabbing food to help humans eat is what forks are for. A purpose that is imposed by a human use, such as that fork, is called extrinsic. The natural teleology contends that natural entities have intrinsic purposes, irrespective of human use or opinion. For instance, Aristotle claimed that an acorn's intrinsic telos or purpose is to become a fully grown oak tree. Only thing that you should remember is in teleology, it focuses on the intention and purpose. Like, what is the purpose of air? Is to provide oxygen or for humans to breathe. That is what they call intrinsic purpose. Another example is why ballpen have ink. Why ballpen have ink is for the ballpen to be able to write. That's the purpose of the ink for the ball. That's the purpose of the ink for the ballpen to write. And the purpose of ballpen is to write. Any question about teleology? Are you sure? Now that we are done with our discussion, let's now have a group activity. I will group you into 3 groups, and what you're going to do is to answer these questions. Number 1. Which of the following is not teleological? A. Obeying laws regardless of the consequences. B. Creationism. C. Prayer. D. Money. Number 2. Who is the proponent of deontology? A. Immanuel Kant. B. John Stuart Mill. C. Plato. D. Immanuel Kant. Number 3. How does consequentialism judge morality? A. By the intention behind an action. B. By the result of an action. C. By the logic behind a thought or belief. D. By the fairness of legal and social punishment or consequences. 4. What makes an action utilitarian? A. When it creates the best benefit for the person who performed the action. B. When it benefits the greatest number of people in the best possible way. C. When it follows the moral law of the society. Or D. When it has no negative consequences. Number 5. One of the guiding forces behind Immanuel Kant's deontology was the idea of natural law. Natural law states that A. There is a right and there is a wrong, and a man must use reason to know the difference. B. Man is too unreasonable to live in any way other than harmony with nature. C. Man is naturally unable to govern himself, therefore he needs the guidance of God. And D. Man's unethical acts will lead to his demise in the eyes of God. For your individual activity, give at least 3 example or scenario of the following: deontology, teleology, and consequentialism. Kahit ano lang, kahit maiksi lang. And answer this question for our evaluation. Explain in your own words the concept of consequentialism, deontology, and teleology. This is 50 points class. And you can use any clean paper, basta white. For your assignment, research about Euthyphro dilemma and the divine command theory for the sake of our discussion, for the sake of our next discussion. And that's all for today's discussion. Thank you. Goodbye, class.